Alright, so a couple years back, I did my top 10 favorite Batman villain list. But over the years since that video, well, two videos I should say, I've kind of really I've been that back then I was just getting more deeper into comics, and now that the years have gone by and I've really got to read more great stories from these characters, I really sat down and thought, what characters do I really like? Do I really enjoy reading the most? And not to discredit, because all Batman villains are great. And this list, when I was doing the redux of this list, I was like, man, there are certain characters on here that I really just want to put on here, and if I did like a top 20 list, I would probably put all of them on here, because they all have their own, best stories to them, and, great characteristics and why people like them. And again, this is just my personal opinion. If you think a character should be on here higher or lower or not at all, that's totally fine. No ill will against you. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not saying, these are the top 10 Batman villains and you should like them because I do, brah. I'm not saying that at all. These are just characters that I enjoy reading in Batman comics in terms of villains. And this list, once again, was a bitch to think of because, again, now that I've, on the years have gone by and I've really, gotten deeper into comics, I've really just had to sit down and think, okay, what characters do I really enjoy reading the most and love seeing them show up and, the character stories you can do with them. And this, once again, this list was hard. So, yeah. But once again, these are just my personal favorite characters. If you think a character should be on here either higher or lower or not on the list at all, again, that's totally fine. No ill will against you. This is just my personal favorite villains. Also, I kind of just didn't want to do the whole countdown thing. I'll just... when you see the character, you'll know what number they are, and I'll list it off. So yeah, without further ado, let's delve into this list, as you can see right here. Yeah, with number 10, excuse me, yeah. Number 10, the Mad Hatter. Yep, Jervis Tetch. You may be thinking, seriously, the Mad Hatter? Really? He's kicking off this list? Really? The Mad Hatter? Yes, really, the Mad Hatter. Jervis Tetch, to me, is by far one of the creepiest Batman villains I've ever come across. You see, when he was first introduced in the TV show, that was probably like a gateway for a majority of Batman fans, was the 90s TV show. To me, he was so creepy because he, as Batman put it, he perverted this timeless classic tale of Alice in Wonderland and turned it into a real horror show. I mean, you could say what you want, that story is creepy, but it always had a childlike charm to it, and long before American McGee got his hold on it, we had Tetch to ruin our Alice in Wonderland for him. The thing the scary thing about the Mad Hatter, the thing about Tetch, is the very scary thing about him is that he can control your mind. He's one of the best when it comes to mind control, he's up there with Grodd and a few others. And the guy is clearly out of his mind whenever he talks about, oh, Kalu Kalei, the bat has come to play, and all that. He's a very unnerving character, because even though he's not exactly the strongest Batman character, he's not, he can't go toe-to-toe with the likes of Batman or Robin or anyone else. Hatter, on the other hand, can go mentally. As crazy as he is, he can mentally wear you down and mentally destroy you. Remember Pre-Cancer to Dream? And, of course, there are other Batman stories where, the Mad Hatter has, more or less mentally controlled, at some points, entire teams of people under his control. And that's what I've always found terrifying about him, because in his own warped way, he thinks he's doing the right thing, and, there are some darker elements to him. It's always been hinted that, he may have been he may be a sex offender, he may be so many other things, but it's so scary that someone with those kind of tendencies is this smart. And it's always unnerving. He's not really used as much these days, but when he is used, I feel like, he can just really twist your mind. He can just really, absolutely, horrifically screw with you. And to me, that's what makes him such a dangerous threat, is that he can't get you physically, he's gonna get you mentally, and even if you break free of his control, then you're stuck with all the horrible shit he made you do. Whether, I don't even want to begin to think of what he could possibly do to a person in their their altered mental state. Excuse me, got a little tongue-tied there. But that's what I've always found the most scary thing about Jervis, is that he's a little goblin who can just mess with you to no end. This is a guy who, he's not really interested in killing Batman. It's just more like, oh, Batman, go away. It's not that he's smarter or anything. He just wants to live out these sick, childlike fantasies that are just so goddamn creepy. Yeah. But yeah, anyway. So there you go, guys. Kicking off this list at number 10, the Mad Hatter. At number 9, we have Thomas Elliot, a.k.a. Hush. You may be thinking, again, Hush, really? Well, hear me out. This is what... Now, a long time ago, when I did my first top 10 Batman list, I talked about how Hush was my number 1 Batman villain. But like I said years ago, the years have gone by and I've read more comics, I've understood characters more, I've understood character arcs more, and I've understood, I've come to understand other Batman villains and come to love more of them, and some of my other ones that I really loved, it's kind of waned a bit. One of those being Hush, but however, the reason why he's still on this list in my top 10 favorite Batman list is because he's so fascinating to me. Because here's a guy, he's not out to hurt Batman, he's out to hurt Bruce Wayne, which I think is a really cool idea. Here's a guy who is quintessentially the reverse Bruce Wayne in almost a way, where Hush, Thomas Elliot, the only reason he really hates Bruce Wayne is because he got to have the life that he never had, his parents were assholes, and, he grew up kind of already a broken person, and, yeah, he lived with this overbearing mother, he was, and, when he found the love of his life, he was kind of like, nah, fucker, I like money more. So that was kind of the scary thing about Hush, was that, this is a man driven by greed and insanity, and he really just has this weird fixation on just ruining Bruce Wayne because he's jealous of him. So that's what I've always found very, disturbing about him, is that here's a guy who has no other reason to hate another person, other than, I hate you because my life wasn't like yours. That is it. No other reason. It's just that, he just hates him, and he goes as far, when you go as far as to surgically change your face to look like the guy you hate, just to fuck with his friends and family, then you, my friend, have reached a whole new level of disturbed, in my opinion. And, yeah, this guy is conniving, he's insane, he's just driven by all this hatred for no other good reason than jealousy. That's kind of the big thing, is that he just took the the whole jealous aspect of it, the whole aspect of jealousy, and turned it up to 11, more or less. That was, that's kind of the big thing with him, is that he's the embodiment of jealousy, and he just wants to do all this just to hurt Bruce Wayne. He could give two fucks about Batman. Really, he could give two shits about, oh, I hate the Dark Knight. Bruce Wayne? I just hate the guy under him. I don't hate Batman, per se. I hate the guy behind the mask. That's who I really hate. And I'm going to do everything in my power just to say, ha ha ha, I beat you. Now you know what it feels like, even though Bruce did nothing. He was Bruce Wayne's best friend in his childhood. So that was kind of the big thing that, kind of kept Hush on this list, because, yeah, I've looked back and said, I've looked back at the Hush story and I was like, man, this is not as good as I remember it. But other stories involving him, especially Heart of Hush, oh my god, Paul Dini's story, Heart of Hush, is pretty awesome. And a few other stories here and there involving Hush, it's just really made me realize, yeah, this guy is not right in the head, and he's scary as hell, and he has this odd obsession with just hurting Bruce Wayne for the sake of, I wish my life was like yours. Yeah. So, yeah, there you go. At number 9, Hush. So, moving right along to number 8. And at number 8, yep, Basil Karlo, a.k.a. Clayface. Why Clayface on the list? Simply being, at first, Clayface is a giant mud man. How cool is that, first off, What more do I have to say? Giant mud man? Fuck yeah, awesome. But here's the thing. The reason why I've really, at first I was thinking, I don't know how much I really like Clayface, but I've really thought about it more. I was like, yeah, he's a cool and interesting character. The thing about with Clayface, and why why I've come to really like the character, is first off, he's a very interesting opponent for Batman, because here's a guy who has superpowers. By all means, Clayface should be fighting Wonder Woman or Superman or Green Lantern. For all intents and purposes, he should be fighting someone else. He doesn't, like, you look at him and go, that guy does not look like a Batman villain in any way, shape, or fucking form. Yeah, so what I like about him is that whenever Batman faces off with Clayface, it's this very interesting, Batman really has to think outside the box because Clayface is technically one of his few superpowered villains. Really, yeah, he's one of the few villains he has to really think outside the box, up there with Joker and whatnot. The reason why is because I have no powers. I can't just punch this guy. If I try to punch him, he's just going to suck me in and suffocate me. So I got to find some water and pour it all over him or some shit like that to stop this guy. So that's kind of the thing with him, is that Clayface brings this whole new and dangerous element for Batman to fight. The other thing, and this is a more personal reason for me of why I kind of dig Basil Karlo out of all the other Clayfaces, because we've had, 5, right? We've had, 5 different Clayfaces. The reason why I really dig Basil Karlo out of most of them, because Basil, for those who don't know, is a trained actor, and he did a lot of horror films before he became Clayface. He was a trained actor who learned how to he more or less played the monster in a lot of films. He played a lot of scary and terrifying monsters and villains in his film career. He was never really the big action star. He was never really the big, I'm going to save the day, because of how his face looked. Because he was very based off of Boris Karloff. In fact, Basil Karlo, there you go, Boris Karloff, Basil Karlo, you see where I'm going with this? So that was the big thing with Basil, and for those who know me, then you know that some of my favorite movies growing up were some of the classic, a lot of the Boris Karloff and, Universal monster movies, as well as the Hammer films. And Basil Karlo embodies that in comic form. He embodies everything I've loved about early horror movies from both Universal and the Hammer horror movies. So, on a more personal level, I kind of dig him on that round. Among other things, what I really like about him, going also on his superpowers and his acting, is that the dude was an actor. The dude knows how to act, and the fact that he can shapeshift himself and make himself look and act like somebody else is terrifying. The fact that he can, he could spend months studying somebody and use his acting skills to more or less, play that person for months or, weeks, months, or even years without anybody noticing until he gets splashed with water or something, then, he really brings this this level of terror of, who done it? He could be anybody, or, he could be anything or anyone. It's kind of like the Terminator. It's kind of like the T-1000 in a way. It's very much like the T-1000 in that regard, where you have this kind of villain who can just literally be anything, be anyone, and come up behind you and kill you, and then worse, take your identity and go about his business until someone figures it out and you're already a headless corpse in the middle of an alleyway. You see where I'm going with this? So yeah, quintessentially, he's when you really think about it, Clayface is terrifying, because he's not only just a superpowered villain, he's a smart superpowered villain. Characters like Clayface are usually like these big, hulking, dumb monsters. Not him. Not Clayface. Well, yeah, we've had some dumb Clayfaces, but really, Basil Karlo was the one that made you go, I am totally terrified of this character, because he was a trained actor, and he's got the power and the anger to do whatever the flying fuck he wants, and hurt whoever he wants. So yeah, there you go. At number 8, Clayface. At lucky number 7, or unlucky, depending on your point of view on this list, is, of course, Harley Quinn. Yep, Harleen Quinzel. Yeah, of course, the thing is with Harley is that I have a love-hate thing with Harley. As you can see, I'm not using, the Harley Quinn from the New 52. I'm not using the Harley Quinn from the New 52. I'm using her classic look. And like everyone else, I was introduced to her character, of course, in the animated series. That's where, I found Harley Quinn, and that's where I think a lot of us fell in love with that character, because here was this ditzy, Yet some, this ditzy psychotic who's hanging out with the Joker, who by all means should kill this woman at any chance he got. And that's the interesting thing is that, she has this interesting dichotomy with the Joker, who, here's the best way to describe Joker and Harley's relationship. Or should I say Jokers, thank you, now that we know, what really the Joker is, or the group of people he is, thanks to DC, Rebirth. I'll get more into that, and I've already said my piece about it, but, I'll talk more about that soon. Give you a hint. But yeah, getting back to Harley, the best way to describe Harley and Joker's relationship is kind of like the sweet girl who's dating the bully or jock that, that picks on her and abuses her, but she keeps going back. It's kind of like watching an episode of Cops, really, isn't it? But yeah, she's kind of like the little the little cute girl who, you loved in high school or junior high, but she's clearly dating the wrong guy, and she's like, no, I can change him. No matter how many times he beats me, I could still see good in him. Yeah, so it kind of brings us back to that, and that's kind of perfectly the best way to describe, Joker and Harley's relationship. Now, of course, Harley is a lot of fun. She is clearly, she's just having a wonderful time with that big mallet, that smart alecky kind of tone. But here's the thing, getting back to the hate stuff. And yeah, you can probably guess it's the New 52 Joker. Now, I don't mind that Harley Harley's getting so much attention these days, as well as, Harley getting, an ongoing, and even being in a movie. Finally, she gets to be in a live-action movie. I'm happy. Margot Robbie, I'm really excited for her as Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad movie and her own standalone movie. Yeah, I'm excited for that. But here's the thing. What I don't like what they've done with Harley is make her quintessentially DC's Deadpool. They've made her DC's Deadpool, and you can clearly see it in the comics from, the ongoing series and everywhere else. They clearly looked at Deadpool and went, Deadpool's pretty famous for Marvel. Who do we have that's kinky and weird and, could do a lot of cool, fun shit and we could overexpose? Harley Quinn! Yeah, you already had your own Deadpool equivalent back in the 90s. His name was Lobo, and you fucked that character up so hard. I digress. But still, there's a lot of love for Harley Quinn, despite everything, despite what the New 52 has quintessentially done with Harley, she's still a lot of fun. I can't deny that this character is still a lot of fun to see her run around, calling everybody idiot. She's like a Looney Tune. Like she's even said, at one point in my life, go to the Looney Tunes. She's adorable, she's fun, and, and by all intents and purposes, when you think about it, you'd rather hug her and then realize, oh my god, she just stabbed me. So that's kind of the thing, is that and here's the other thing I love about Harley. Behind all of that, craziness and the weird get-ups and the gags and hanging out with, by all intents and purposes, one of the greatest mass serial killers in comics, she's pretty damn smart. A lot of people tend to forget that, people just write her as kind of klutzy and dopey, but in reality, you guys remember that she was a psychiatrist, right? You guys remember that, she's pretty goddamn smart when it comes to, doing stuff, when she really if she really has a plan and she really thinks about it, she's gonna get you no matter what, and she's gonna fuck with your head, too. Remember, she's brains and brawn. Anyway, so there you go, guys. At number 7, Harleen Quinzel. You gotta love Harley. And now for number 6. Number 6 is, of course, Victor Freeze, a.k.a. Mr. Freeze. Now, Mr. Freeze was, again, was another character I've had on this list, similar to Clayface and Hatter and Hush. But the reason why, at first he was at number 8, but I've kind of bolstered him up a bit to number 6, mostly because, the reason being is because Mr. Freeze, when you think about it, well, you don't really need to think about it. There's so much you can love about this character and still feel, love and pity him at the same time. Here's a man who had everything. Here's a man who had the love of his life. He had so much to his character. he had so much, what's the word I'm looking for? So much going for him. He had the love of his life, he had a job he loved, and one little accident destroyed everything. Quintessential, not just for, DC villains and comic book villains in general, but there was an added element, was that he's doing all this to save his wife. He's trying to save his wife's life, and he's trying to, you want to root for him. You really do root for him. And there are points where you're like, go away, Batman. You're ruining it. He's so close to saving his wife. Get the fuck out of here, you caped fuck. So you really do want to see him succeed at some points, even though what he's doing is wrong. He's killing people for his wife. He's doing all of these horrible things, but at the same time, when you really think about it, and if you had someone you loved in the same situation as Freeze was in, would you really condemn him that quick? You really do, and you could easily say, yeah, I totally condemn him. He did this to himself. His wife's illness, he has to nut up and live with his life. He can't just go around killing people in that suit. Well, really just sit down and think about someone you really love, and then think about how Freeze felt, and then, really put yourself into perspective of how far you are willing to go for someone you love, and what you are willing to do for that person, even if it means destroying your own soul in the process. Just really think about that. And plus, he's never going to be able to hold her hand. He cannot leave his suit. He's more or less ruined his body, and he's living this hell, more or less. He's living this quintessential hell for the rest of his life, and yeah, there's nothing he can do about it. That's what I really loved in Batman Arkham Knight, where we got the side quest with Victor, and it was just a sweet side quest with him, of him finally coming to terms with his wife's illness, and him finally, accepting it. And I really do love how, him and Nora, bond over the several weeks they have left together, and just take the ship and go out and into the sun, sail out into the ocean. Yeah, I felt like it was a bittersweet story and a bittersweet ending for Freeze. I felt like that was the ending he's always deserved, in a way. So, yeah. But yeah, there's not much else I can say about Mr. Freeze that hasn't been said already, and I feel like, yeah, he deserves to be at this spot, but there are 5 other characters that really, and again, he was very close to being in the top 5, but there are 5 other characters that really made me go, oh man, I really like those more. I really like those guys more. And again, when I got to the top 5, I really had to stop and think and go, oh, this is hard. But anyway, so yeah, there you go, guys. There you go. This is my top 10. The first half of my top 10 Batman's villain list redone. Yeah, no, this is the remake. And yeah, once again, I want to thank everyone, because this is kind of a long video, but I wanted to go more in depth of why I chose these villains and why I love them so much, and why I've kind of chosen these 10 out of the others. Again, not to discredit other characters like Two-Face and Riddler and Black Mask and several other characters, but I really had to think about it, and all of them are great. This is why, when you think villains in comics, what's usually the first rogues gallery you think of? Batman. And there's a good reason for it. Batman's villains are so, well done. They're so complex. They're some of the most complex villains in the DC universe, and in comics in general, that I remember watching something on the History Channel about Batman, and there was a psychiatrist on there when they got to the section about the Batman villains, and he literally said, I could write an entire thesis on the psyche of one of these villains and get a Nobel Prize for, I could get multiple awards, including the Nobel Prize, for studying and doing a psychiatric evaluation of any of these Batman villains. That tells you something. That really does tell you something. And again, not to discredit any of these Batman villains, because this list was pretty fucking hard, because like I said, I really had to sit down and think of villains I really enjoyed as characters. And again, if you think these characters should be higher or lower on this list, or not at all, or other characters that should be on this list, that's totally fine. It's your list. This is just my personal opinion of why I love these characters, and how much love I give to these characters. But yeah, and I'm always excited to see what is always on your list. So once again, just comment below, let me know. What are your top 10 favorite Batman villains? Just comment below, let me know, and this is just my personal opinion, my personal list. But anyway, once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and stay tuned for the top 5.